We're here at ACE 2019 with Richard Dolan. Richard, can you summarize in one thought the results of the last 2 years of disclosure, or is it a subject that's so complex that, or even in the past 2 years, that it requires extensive discussion?
Well, here we are in the later part of 2019, and when I look at the last 2 years of the UFO field, it's gone through a tremendous change. So to summarize it quickly would be a challenge, but it can be done simply by saying a great deal more openness is now the rule, the norm, in the public realm of when one talks about UFOs than what we had prior to 2017. So the amount of openness that you get with corporate mainstream media, there's no comparison today compared with the way the situation was 2 years ago. It's way, way more open. Much more information is coming out. Now, behind that statement is a huge backstory of what has actually been going on behind the scenes to allow for this situation. And there's a lot of complexities involved. I think what we are seeing is an organization known as TTSA, To the Stars Academy, that's been driving most of this. These are people with very strong connections to the intelligence community, military community. They've got their connections to the world of media. They've got their connections even into the world of politics. And I think these individuals are leveraging those connections to push their message as far forward as they're able to. They've got allies and they've got opponents. And it seems to me that they're negotiating their way through that path, doing what they can do to get their UFO message out to the world.
Okay. In the light of your book, UFOs and Disclosure in the Trump Era, tell us what you think about the chances of something happening about disclosure with this president.
We've been in more than two and a half years now of the presidency of Donald Trump. It's worth asking, is there anything in this presidency that will lead us to think that there will be a UFO moment, a UFO disclosure? And I'm definitely inclined to think no. It's interesting, though, because, you know, when Trump came into the White House, I'm sure there were a lot of people who wondered, this might be a guy who might make things happen. You could just see a 2 a.m. tweet coming from Trump, seriously, like, people, we all know it's real. Trump is the kind of president who goes off script every single day. And so with a subject that is as uncontrollable as UFOs, you might wonder, is this something that he would do? But I think it's very clear, looking at the last couple of years, that that's not going to happen. This is a president who has been very much surrounded by the same kind of imperial neocon crowd, frankly, that you had under Obama, that you had under George W. Bush and all the prior presidents. So I don't think, in terms of larger geostrategic policy, there's been a significant difference. In fact, in a lot of ways, it's been even more hawkish, in some ways a little less hawkish. But it's basically the same old, same old. I'm not seeing a movement toward disclosure with UFOs from him. Now, I'll say this. I've never believed that there's going to be a voluntary initiative toward disclosure coming from the political establishment. I don't believe there's never a motivation for that power structure to move toward disclosure. I don't think we're seeing it now either. So what I think the only way you're going to see it is if something happens, if enough leaks, if enough information comes out that someone is pushed to the wall and they have no choice but to say something. And then if they end up saying something, you have to be sure that it's going to be spun in a way that suits their interests the most. And that's certainly the case with the UFO subject. What we're seeing right now, in terms of the transformation of media coverage, is not, in my view, the result of a disclosure effort by the government or by the intelligence community per se. I don't believe that. I think what we're seeing is a faction of individuals, the TTSA faction, that have their motivations for moving this forward using their allies. That's a different thing than saying the government or the CIA or any other group of the government is trying to push it. I don't think that's what we're looking at.
Okay, thank you. So what do you think is the best possible outcome for disclosure?
Well, there's a lot of bad possible outcomes of disclosure. So let me start with that. One of the bad possible outcomes of disclosure is a world in which all of our digital media is completely micromanaged, which is the world we're moving into. So where you've got greater and greater and greater levels of censorship over freedom of speech, expression, and elimination of fringe ideas. If you do a YouTube search of UFO, so you go onto YouTube and type in UFO to the search engine, you will get, right now, ABC News, NBC News, CBS, Fox, BBC, CNN, all of the and plus like Sony Pictures and major corporations with UFO movies and things like that. So all of the independent voices are being shoved aside. And that is because Google's search algorithms are rigged now. They're fundamentally dishonest, geared toward promoting major corporate interests. So, and then of course, you got the deplatforming, demonetizing, all of the fringe voices. There is definitely an attempt, a strong attempt, being made right now to close the circle, as it were, and keep the fringe voices out. So we're moving there. And the question could be, if we go far enough down that road, and with a new population of people who grow up, getting their news from Alexa and these one-sentence, statements from Google search. I mean, the whole new generation of people now are growing up without a proper ability to research. Like, their whole idea is, I'll get my answers from the web. One answer. And this is Eric Schmidt of Google has explicitly said that this is what they're trying to do. They want you to you ask a question, you get one answer. So what that means is, reality is always complex. Reality isn't just one answer. So what you have is a whole new generation of people, and they are learning they're learning that we don't need to do research. We're just going to ask, and the internet will tell us. So research skills are going away. Fringe ideas are being pushed aside. We're probably 10 years behind China, frankly, in a full-blown social credit system in which you're going to be gauged and tagged and monitored for the rest of your life on your social likes and your behaviors and all of that, and it will probably affect your ability to get a mortgage or get a job. It's already happening a little bit. It's going to happen much more. So the worst case scenario is that disclosure happens in that world, where there are no alternate voices that are challenging the fundamental narratives. In a world where that narrative is completely controlled, anything can be said, and the best way to keep a secret is by pretending to share it. And that would be my worst case scenario. So we'd have like a disclosure that would be filled with so much spin that it's basically a dishonest disclosure, and people accept it. That would be a problem. Best case scenario, I don't really know if I think that there's much of a best case scenario. The best case scenario, I guess, could be that it's messy. I think that's probably the best case scenario, where it's uncontrolled, where something, I envisioned this 10 years ago with my book After Disclosure, where something happens that's not in the playbook, a sighting that can't be explained, or a leak that can't be explained away, that causes a snowball effect or an avalanche effect, as it were, where it gets messy. It's probably the best case scenario, because a messy disclosure is one that's going to wake up a lot of people to the fact that they've really been lied to. And I think I'm not someone who likes social unrest. Believe me, I do not want that. You do not want that. Some people think they do. It's a bad idea. But the secret has been going so deep for so long that I don't really see a way to wake people up to the depths, the enormity of how deep this is. I mean, most people who follow this stuff casually, they really have no idea, like, how unbelievably deep this secret goes, how privatized it is, how private entities have hijacked U.S. government through special access programs to just run the show and make money off of tax dollars to study this advanced tech that has been acquired. It's not from here. All of this is true, and so much more. We live in the upside-down world, all right? That's what we live in. And so what is needed, unfortunately, is a real shock to the system, and that would be a messy disclosure where the main narrative is held up to question and is being discarded. I have fears about where we come out at the end of it, because I don't like talk about revolution, but this is a secret that's been so profound for so long. I don't see any way. So I think you need a fresh breeze of something to blow out the old world, a world of intense secrecy, intense privatization. It's a legal form of illegality, is what we've seen. It's legal illegality, and we need something very strong. So the best case would be a messy disclosure started by something that is unexpected, that is not part of the script, and that throws everything out of kilter.
Okay, that sounds like that's an interesting way to look at it, but I really like the thought that I'm a hopeful person, and I really believe that we're going to get through this in a good way. But,
well, ultimately, we're all going to get through it. We're not going to go extinct. We will survive in some way. Things can absolutely get worse, and eventually they can get better. Like, will they get better in our lifetime is a real good question to ask, and the answer is very possibly no. It could get a lot worse. Think about what we're moving into, just even leaving UFOs aside for the moment. We're now moving into a world of complete, total loss of your privacy. When they roll out 5G and all of the interconnected smart devices, you will literally have not a single place where you can hide. So you're going to be monitored, you're going to be tagged, bagged, quantified, and sent off to some data processing cloud server. And it's only a matter of time before that information will be used against you and against all of us. On top of that, we really have to ask, what are people going to be doing with their lives? I mean, honestly, you got all these people talking about universal basic income because everyone knows we're having what's called the robo-apocalypse. Like, that's a real probability where the jobs are just not going to be there for most people. What are people going to do with their lives? I mean, I guess you can always take more drugs and watch more toxic entertainment. That's probably going to be the answer. And you'll be monitored. You'll be a ward of the state. So, goodbye independence of thought and action. Like, that's really the world we're moving into. It's not a world I want to live in. Like, to me, disclosure in that world, it's like, no thanks, I'll pass. Take me on a ship, I'll go to the moon, I'll make a base there, I'll live there. I don't want to live in a world where I'm going to be monitored for the rest of my life with no privacy, and on top of that, with constant drumbeat propaganda pressure telling me what I'm supposed to be thinking all the time now, because that's the other part of it. It's one thing you lose all privacy, then it's another to have someone telling you how you're supposed to think and act at all times. Like, thanks, I'll opt out. So to me, moving into that world, and with so much more, cognitive implants, anyone? People talking about that. It's like, take a cell phone, stick it in your brain. Yeah, that'll make you smarter. No, thank you. So with all of that happening, I think of the likelihood of getting to the truth on UFOs. And it's not going to happen. You know why? Because we're only so intelligent. This is a phenomenon that's operating a few steps ahead of us. And the fact is, like, we struggle to understand it even now. And yes, I think that there are definite truths that are hidden away. There is a cover-up. But do those people with more access to this than us, how much do they know? I don't think that they know everything either. We're dealing with a mystery, and there's an intelligence there. Is that intelligence here to help us? Are they here to harm us? Do they give a shit or not? I don't even know. Everyone's got their own opinion. The thing is, where we are struggling to understand this even now, the only thing we can confidently say is there's something important going on. And whether we're really ever going to be able to get there, like, are they just going to, do us a solid and say, here we are, welcome to the galactic neighborhood. We're going to elevate your consciousness. Like, there are people who really are, that's their whole hope, is we're going to join the galactic community. It's like Deus Ex Machina all over again. Like, we've screwed things up so badly, but don't worry, the aliens are going to make it all better for us because we suck so hard, but they're going to make it better. They're going to elevate us to the next density, next dimension, whatever. So to me, that's fantasy. I don't believe that. But are they here to do something nefarious? Like, I don't know that either. So we only can rely on ourselves, and I don't put a lot of stock in getting all the answers to this. We get some answers, and that leads to more questions, and it's not even a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to have mysteries. It's not a bad thing not to know everything. What's a bad thing is moving into a world where we have no freedom, where we are embedded with a toxic culture that takes us away from each other, where we're wedded alone to our little digital interfaces, atomized from each other. Like, that's bad. And if we have each other, like, genuinely to love and support in an eyeball-to-eyeball context, right, then anything else is acceptable. Any other problem, we can get through it. So to me, that's my number one concern. I'd like to see a disclosure of the UFO reality, like a true, honest one, but I don't want to see it if it's going to mean the world that we're moving into of total control over all narratives in which, we're living in some kind of weird dystopia.
Thank you, Richard, and maybe we'll catch you next time. Earth Mystery News.